Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the Real Collective podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Sean Tasse, joined by my illustrious co-host, Kyle Miller. Kyle, how are you today?
Oh, living the dream back in the, it feels like winter's actually showed up back up again. A little bit colder than it has been in our nice spring that we've had in January and February.
Yeah.
So that's, adjusting. But hey, it's Canada. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It'll change.
The community rink is getting close to back up and running in our hood, so that'll be fun.
There you
As
go.
always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might like this type of conversation. As well, you can download the buyer or seller guides below, or schedule an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly links below. We thought we wanted to get into talking about some particular scenarios that nobody really likes talking about, but we need to talk about, and that is the scenario of death and how that impacts you when you're buying your house. If you're
That
going
was
to
a smooth transition, by the way.
die, thanks.
Death.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's there's no easy way to talk about it. It's obviously a really terrible situation, and it has impact on the real estate world. And so, knowing what it is before you get into it will be very helpful. Talk a little bit about story time before we get into it. I had started a story last week about a property that we had conditionally sold as a right of first refusal with a backup offer. The backup offer didn't work. Deal fell apart. Conditionally sold again with a different backup offer, which is the same deal from the first one. And we were, wanting to see where it all fell down or fell apart or what ended up happening to it at the very end. Well, the end of the story is the second offer that came in that had a backup offer in place that was subject to the sale of the house of the first people. As confusing as that is, if you're with me,
Yeah.
uh, the first deal we held on really tight because we knew the second deal was a better one. We wanted that second deal. We wanted the backup offer. So what we did is we said to the first people, they did the inspection. They said, "Oh, well, here's our laundry list of items that we want you to fix about the house. So, here it's this, and this. We'll take care of all those things. Just reduce the price by $12,000." And so the seller said, "No, we will not reduce the price at all. You either take it or leave it." And humming and hawing, the buyer came back. "Oh, would you do this? Oh, would you do that? Can you do this?" No, 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 no. Hard line, no. And finally, what happened? They just said, "Okay, we'll take it." Right?
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So they did it. Now they ended up buying the property for something like, I'm gonna say, like $10,000 or $15,000 less than the backup offer that we had, which is why we were able to be so strong with that offer when they asked for money. We're like, "No, we don't want to sell to you," right? So yeah, it is what it is. Those people who were the backup offer who missed out had an opportunity to remove their conditions if they were willing to take that risk on the first deal, but they didn't want to remove them. They were not willing to take the risk, and as a result, they ended up losing out on the house. Now they're not moving at all. So their deal on their house was subject to them buying this one. So that deal fell through, and they're not buying the house
Wow.
they wanted. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Takes
the infinite, it's the infinite dominoes that we talk about, right?
yeah,
And it's yeah, talk to clients about that all the time of just like we need to have plan A, need to have plan B as best we can, plan C, because as that happens, right, it's just tick, 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 tick. That guy, you bought that house, but didn't. So that buy can't buy that house and in that one, and it just goes.
yeah,
So eventually it stops. But wow, that's interesting for sure.
yeah. Well, the way that this one crumbled down had an impact on these people, but it also had an impact on the people who were buying their house, right? Because
Mhm.
they're not buying this, so they're back to square one, trying to find something else. So, anyways, very interesting scenario. Not something that you see all the time, but I think we'll see those types of things more and more often as we move forward. Um, what's going on in the mortgage world? A bit of chatter, bit of up and down. Where are we at now these days?
Yeah, as of today, well, quite honestly, it's that roller coaster. I've said it multiple times, said it multiple times on the podcast that you want if you're looking to lock in rates and so on and so forth, you need to be doing it. Unfortunately, you need to be doing it throughout the process and especially on the lead up to any of the Bank of Canada announcements, which should be coming up again soon, early March, I believe. So another 2 and a bit weeks.
Yeah.
And because we've seen it all, like there was some bad news, and that's the toughest part. Bad news brings better interest rates. So there was some bad news a few weeks ago, and we saw rates dip, and that was exciting to a degree. And then there was good news, like we had more jobs than we thought, and the U.S. inflation wasn't as bad as they thought. So that was like, oh. So then we started going back up, and that's where we're now. We're on that part of the roller coaster coming back up, and we'll see what happens. I still don't think they're going to move anything in 2.5 weeks. Like I think Prime's going to stay the same, which is probably just going to mean that the rates could stay, the fixed rates could stay or come down, but that also depends on a pile of other factors that we're just sitting here watching. And as my colleague always says, it's all voodoo and feelings at the end of the day. So so quote my buddy James Leach on that one, but that's what it is. That's what it is. I can't say it any better than that.
Just poking a doll.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so it's definitely more than ever. If and I honestly, like, I've never been a massive proponent of getting like crazy rate holds, because for so much of my career, there was always an option to get as good a product at the same interest rate or better. And now it's just like you have to. Like I'm seeing people right now who have sat and just like not acted quick enough or just got back to me because they're just like, man, him and hawing, and that's, I'm not dogging them, but they've missed. They've missed their opportunity.
Well, hang on. They've missed for today. If they're closing in 90 days, what are the chances that there's a special that comes on sometime? Like you said, it's the roller coaster. Like
Yeah,
it's the people who are closing in a month from now and haven't reached out or haven't sorted themselves out that they might have missed, right?
yeah, true, very true. Like there's always going to be opportunities. It's more to the effect of just it needs to be on your brain. If you're doing something real estate wise in the next 9 to 12 months, it needs to be on your brain now. And if it's not, that's okay. You're not a bad person. It's just realize there's going to be it will change. It will change. It could benefit you. It could hurt you,
Right.
but it will change. Guaranteed.
So let me ask you this. Do you do this for your clients? If you've got like a pipeline of like, hey, I've got these closings coming up, do you rebook them if you see like, oh wow, this is gonna help them without them asking, or like between firm and closed?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. We try to do that as much as we can. And that's part of the strategy too. Like the one of the toughest things for people to wrap their heads around, brokers too, but in most, like, generally speaking, clients, is the fact that a lot of things in mortgages are the same. Like I can pour it or I can't. My rate's this, my prepayments are this, and that's very similar. But uh, the thought that there's a misconception that, well, if the rates go down, I can just automatically get that, which in most cases you can. But some lenders do have limits on how often they will allow it to drop. Others will do it in the background. You just show up one day and be like, oh, look at that, I got a better rate, didn't even have to do anything. And others are like, hey, you got one, so when are you rolling the dice on this, right? and and people are like, well, that's not cool. I get it, but that's also part of that's part of the intricacies of shopping. So
Mhm.
you may sit there and say, okay, well, I see whatever 499 today for my deal, and I can get you that. But that guy, that lender only has a one time rate drop, right? Whereas if you take the deal at 509 today, that's unlimited rate drops. Let's just see where it goes,
Right.
right? So that's the key. And when we say shop, that's a very general term, but
Yeah.
that's also the key in understanding why the lowest rate may not be the thing that's going to get you the best deal. And it sounds so cliche, but that's truly what it is.
It only
Truly what
sounds
it is.
it only sounds cliche to us because we're the ones saying it all
Well,
the
yeah,
time.
it's true. Yeah. Very salesy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's so that's a long-winded answer to your question of, can that happen? Do we do it? 100% we do it. 100% it can happen, but there's balance that has to be struck.
Yeah, no,
there
that's
too.
interesting. I didn't know that there were. I mean, it makes sense, but I didn't ever think to know about it. So, no, man, that's really cool. Predictions. I think there's a lot of speculation going around that there will not be a drop. They'll just hold the line for this March announcement. There's another announcement in April, and that's sort of a 50-50 as to whether it might be a quarter point down or another hold. And then we don't do a meeting in May, and then the next meeting is going to be in June. And I think by the time June rolls around, there's an expectation that the rates will at least be a quarter lower by then, right?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I think at that point, right, I think we're starting to see the cracks, right? I mean, it might be easy to say, it might be easy to look at it and say, like, look at Bell, just laying off 4,800 people, right? I think that's a mismanagement issue to some degree, right? So it's not just like it's not pure recession, but you're starting to see those cracks of layoffs and things like that, and we're still waiting to see that impact. And unfortunately, bad things have to happen for interest rates to drop. The stronger we are as an economy, the higher the rate, the longer the rates are going to stay. That's what we're seeing on the pricing right now, is the fact that it's just not as bad as it needs to be. And that means they're going to hold it longer. So the market's pricing that we're doing better and for longer. By March, April, May, we're now into Q2. Numbers come in, they're always 3 months, 6 months behind. Then we'll see it and start to see what happens there. So, but again, it's also Ottawa. Like it's everything's just a little bit different here
Yeah.
than anywhere else. So
We're in our own little bubble. I always tell people that when the in 2008, 2009, when the states were going through their big housing crisis, where all of the people were just losing their house essentially, there was one city in the entire country that did not have a significant impact. And you know what city that was? Washington, D.C.
yes, that's right. We've talked about this before. You're right. Yeah.
So federal money, right? And it's insulated, and it's always been the same in Ottawa. Whenever we've got something going on that's happening across the country, it always doesn't seem to hit here as hard. So yeah, I mean, we're lucky in that regard. Cool. Before we jump into talking about the meat of this conversation in terms of what happens if you die, we'll take a quick break here from our sponsor, The Real Collective. I hear they're a wonderful group of people. And we'll come back and we'll spend a little bit more time talking about what happens when you're buying a house in terms of getting a will, what happens if you are selling your house or there's an executor, and during that period between a firm up and closing if someone passes away. So we'll catch you on the flip side. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might like this conversation. Download the buyer or seller guides below. As well, you can schedule an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly links, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to better serve a wide array of clients, including first-time buyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allows us to put our clients at the center of everything we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you are interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the second half of the Real Collective podcast, where we're going to talk about some stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but it should be talked about. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who you think might like this type of conversation, even though they probably don't want to have it. So, death sucks because it is final. And it is something that, as a responsible adult who is buying a home, you need to plan for. So what that means is, if you are buying a house, please get yourself a will to go with it. Why is it important? Because if you don't have a will, It is a nightmare for someone to clean things up. Of course, if you're buying a house and you are a millennial or a Gen Z at this point, you're like, fuck wills, I don't need any of that shit. Cool, good for you. But you do, because it's a house and you don't want to saddle someone else with all of the other stuff that goes along with it. So if you're, adult enough to buy a house, get yourself a will. Probably the same lawyer who's closing the house for you can do the will for you and throw it in as a package deal, and it won't cost a lot of money. All you have to do is answer a couple of simple questions. Who do you want to take care of your stuff? If you do die, who's going to take care of whatever? That's it. That's pretty much it. Who's going to take care of your health stuff? Who's going to take care of your money stuff? They could be two different people. And yeah, how do you own the property? Are you buying it with someone else? Are you tenants in common? Are you joint tenants? Is it a business partner? Is it a romantic partner? All of those things have an effect. But please, 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 when you're buying a house, get a will to go with it. It's like
and insurance. And insurance.
You can't get it without.
No. Sorry. There's 4 insurances that come up, right? You've got quickly. You got default insurance if you got less than 20% down, CMHC, whatever. Then you've got your standard stuff, the home insurance, which you need that to be able to close. Title insurance, different conversation for a different day. It happens too, guaranteed, but again, different conversation. But the fourth one is the life and disability insurance, right? And that's the one. You don't need that to get a mortgage. Right. But I don't use this word. I just posted a video yesterday. It's like the word I hate the most is should. I rarely ever say it, but you should. Yeah, you should have something, because that's the other thing. It becomes who controls. You're dead, but who controls your money and your legacy with that? Yeah. And what are you leaving? What are you leaving behind? For what problem? I can't say anything different. What problem are you leaving behind, or are you completely wiping out for someone? That's a huge thing to think about.
And a lot of the times the mortgage company will offer insurance. You don't have to take that insurance. There's other insurance that you can get in other places. There's private insurance. There's different things, different insurance companies that might offer either something less expensive or something with more coverage to you. So that was when I bought my first house. They were like, hey, do you want to put insurance on? I'm like, okay. Because I didn't know. Nobody explained it. I was like 20 something years old, right? And now I don't have insurance on my mortgage, but I have life insurance. I have, accident insurance. I've got disability insurance, and all of that coverage covers not only my house but my family as well, right? So
I see what I think the most disappointing thing is, and maybe it's because I'm in the industry, but it's the when I see people online who are like, hey, we started this GoFundMe page for this family, and I'm not dogging anybody. No, everybody's situation is different, right? Yeah. But it's the fact that the majority of the time, all of that can be taken care of. Yeah. In this day and age, I find it wild that we're not getting the right education about how this stuff needs to work, right? I say it to clients all the time. So legally, I have to offer mortgage, life, and disability insurance. You don't have to take it, but I have to offer it to you. And lots of times the thing I get, especially in Ottawa, and this is interesting, is you get people specifically at, the government, work for the feds, and they're like, no, I'm fine. I got lots of insurance. I will guarantee you don't have enough. The best death benefit I've ever seen is 2 times your salary. You're buying a $700,000 or $800,000 or $1 million home. You get a $900,000 mortgage. I've seen your income. Double your income is not enough, sir. It is not. Yeah. So having that extra step to help do that just alleviates all those things that are going to happen.
Think about it in terms of your family. Okay, so if I die, if I've got double my income covered, that will cover my family for 2 years. It's going to take them 2 years. I mean, I'm pretty special. It's going to take them 2 years just to grieve me. And then they're done all my money. Right. And so it's that's not enough. I'm sorry to say, not to mention if you die, the house should be paid off. Right.
Well, and there's someone out there saying, yeah, but it's okay. Cause then, I'm going to use husband dies, wife is left. She'll sell the house and then she'll move on and she'll do this. Dude, why does she have to do that in that example?
Yeah.
Why? Right? Give her, like, have that taken care of for the option. The joke I use is more like, you know what? Like, okay, so now you can't go out and buy for the price. You can't go out and buy a case of IPA from your favorite brewery. You have to drink Bud Light a little bit. Like, that's the difference in price here, right?
Yeah.
And not to go all dad on everybody, but it's so sad to see that happening. And it's like, this is a fixable, most of the time, there's always going to be exceptions. This is a fixable thing. And when it just happens automatically because you just bit the bullet and paid for it, like I'm not worried about falling off my motorcycle. I mean, I am, but I'm not. Like, if it happens, like, we're good. So
I'm not worried about my family if I die. I always joke. I say, well, I'm worth more to you dead than I am alive.
Dead than alive.
Not that that's funny. So, yeah, it's absolutely important. I agree. If you're, the other thing is, if you're young, like if you're getting a house and you're 27 and you're young, you're going to have a lower premium. And if you get booked at that lower premium, it carries with you all throughout your life. So get it when you're younger, especially if you're buying a house. That's my rant about preparing for death if you're buying a house. On the flip side is, if you're selling a house, or if you're the executor of someone who's selling a house, or you're the power of attorney, and you switch from power of attorney to an executor, because during the time between when the house sold to when it closes, the owner of the house passes away. So the first question is, are they the only owner of the house? Are there tenants in common? Is there someone else who's also on title? Or is it the only person who's on title? Is there a joint tenancy agreement? What's the difference between the two? I really have to cough. So Kyle, you know the difference between tenants in common and joint tenants? Question mark?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to myself, and you tell it.
Yeah. So joint tenants in common, basically just one is set up that if you pass away, the ownership gets moved to your partner, right? However that is. That's joint tenancy. Tenants in common is when the other partner, the one still living, essentially has to buy your share of the house from the dead person's estate. So my wife and I, like, if one of us dies, the other one gets the house. When I had another house with a buddy of mine, it was we were tenants in common. So if he died, I had to buy his half from his estate, right? And that's how that goes. Yeah. You see that a lot with again, well, those are two very common situations. We'll leave it there.
Yeah, I always say, like, tenants in common, you each own 50% of the house. If there's three of you, you each own 33.3% of the house. Joint tenants, you both own 100% of the house.
Yeah, there you go.
So, not that you get 200% of the house, but you're just, it's the difference between marriage, right? When you're married, you both own everything together. It's not like, oh, what's your account? What's my account? It's like, nope, here is our account, right? And I think that's the main difference. Yeah. So if you are joint tenants and one of the people passes away, no big deal. The other person who's on title can continue to sell it. Sometimes we'll sell a house and we show up and it says, hey, here's the two people that own the house. Well, one of them has already passed away. Okay, cool. I mean, not cool, but it's shitty. But we can continue to sell the house for the person who is remaining, right? Who is not deceased. I'm sorry if we're saying all of this stuff and it's not, especially I'll speak for both of us. If we're coming off as crass or whatever, not at all intended. Just want to talk about what's important, I think. Yeah. So what happens if there's only one person on title and they're not able to make decisions for themselves, and so there's a power of attorney, someone who's making the decision for them, and then between the time at which the house is sold to the time at which it closes, there's going to be what's called a probate period. So it might delay the closing. Yeah.
So long. So annoying.
Well, normally in Ottawa, we find probate to take 8 to 10 weeks. So that's 2 months or 2 months and a half. And a lot of the times, it might happen 2 days before closing, which would delay, at the worst, probably 2.5 months. Not great, but at least you know, hey, here's what's happening. There's different scenarios that you can do. There's risks involved with each. You know, someone can choose uh, to rent it to the people who are going to be buying it in advance of closing, so that at least they can move in even though the property's not closed. There's different scenarios. There's different solutions. Because a lot of the times people who are buying are expecting to take possession of it, right? That day. I think that's the main sort of concern in terms of what might happen in that process. Yeah, I everything's fixable, right?
Yeah, you just have to work out on both sides. When we come back to the insurance, actually, this ties into something, is that like I said, we have this insurance that we have to offer legally. You don't have to take it. But one of the things that insurance covers, the way I understand it too, is that coverage starts like the minute that you have it. But you can only have it because you've been approved for this mortgage and you're buying a house. And an interesting thing is that it would actually still cover you if you were to pass away during your period before you close, right?
Oh.
Because like some people would be thinking like, okay, well, I went and bought a house, right? My wife and I bought a new house. I die, very sad, but we haven't closed on the house yet. So
Right.
what happens to that deal?
Yeah.
Well, it's still a deal. Like legally, we still have to buy that house, but how can we if my income's gone,
Right.
right?
Yes.
That insurance kicks in to be able to finish that deal, right?
Wow. Okay.
So it's like it's that thought of just no one thinks that, and I'm not gonna lie and say I know this story is 100% true. Okay, it's just the one that rolls through the industry pretty regularly, which is just that clients show up, sign a mortgage, for the house that's closing in whatever time, and came separately. Right, wife showed up from work, dad showed up, husband showed up from work, riding his motorcycle. He leaves on the way home, unfortunately passes away in an accident. And they just did this, right? And that's where I say saves the deal, because that's not the point. But that's a whole new level of problem for that grieving widow.
Right.
When
Yeah.
now the purchase you're gonna have, you can't buy, and they're suing you on top of that life event,
Yeah.
right? Like, because again, back to the very first thing we said early on, infinite dominoes,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's gonna feel bad. That seller's not gonna want to do this. But what if they had a house that had a house that had a house?
Yeah.
It's
It's
the
funny.
coverage, man.
A lot of the times we're seeing, funny is not the right word, interesting. A lot of times we're seeing people who are in a house and they're like, look, I can't live here anymore. I was in this house and my partner passed away and I've got to sell because there's just too many memories, right? The walls have every wall has a memory. I'll walk through this house and it feels empty, da da da. I can only imagine what it would feel like in that house if your partner didn't even move in with you, but like died before. Like that'd be a weird house to be in, you know?
Yep, not going down. Not nothing to add. Got nothing to add to that
Oh man,
at all.
that's
At all.
that's tough. It's obviously it's a hard thing to talk about, and a lot of the times when we're dealing with sellers, like I've got an estate sale coming up soon. We do work with a lot of executors just because it's a function of who's selling houses. There's six times. I was just telling a colleague of mine. There's six times normally that entice people to move. Right? You have the three times when you're sort of upgrading, which is a birth or a marriage or a new job, and then you've got the three times when you're thinking about sort of downgrading or selling, which is a death or you lose a job or you get divorced, right? Or yeah, yeah, like those
Yeah.
are this birth or death. That'll indicate one. Lose a job or gain a job, get married or get divorced. Those are the three sort of indicators on each side. I'm not pro and con, but like, hey, this is you're on the upswing or on the downswing, right?
Yeah.
And those are the real motivators for people. Life events.
Where I've actually done a couple this year where, and this is it's again, interesting, not funny, just interesting at how it could work and where and why needing to have this stuff set up is important. So obviously, especially when you're older, but just having it laid out is good. because I've dealt with two different clients now who are buying from the estate of the family, right?
Yeah.
Like this one young lady, she's her dad passed away. She already lives in the house she was living in the house with her dad. Her dad passed away, and he left the house to his three daughters, right? She wants to buy it. The other two do not. And that's a different dynamic that happens there. But the will, and if something happens like that, we go deep. Like, we need the will, we need death certificates sometimes. We need stuff from the lawyers. Like, all of this trickles off to a different conversation revolving fraud, but that's why we need all that kind of stuff to make that work. But it's also interesting because, again, interesting just being how that money can flow. Like, you don't have to show up with down payment for stuff like that because it's gifted from the estate. Like, you can make this stuff work in that situation. It's not like it doesn't have to be super, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's all doable. It's all fixable. Right. So it's definitely interesting dynamics to play around with, for sure.
Absolutely. No, I think that's it's a crappy conversation to have, but like I said, we see it a lot, so it's important to know.
Get a will, get insurance. There it is. This is not financial advice or legal advice. Do it with it what you will, but do those two things.
Yeah, so totally do. All right. So if you have any questions, as always, you can reach out, schedule an appointment with Kyle or I. The Calendly links below. You can also download this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much for your eyes. You can also download both the buyer and seller guides below. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might like this conversation. And until next time, keep it real.
Collective.